Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and I just got back from the new film Iron Man 3. Tony Stark has PTSD after the events of the Avengers, which is referred to in this film as New York, as the Mandarin who has been bombing various sites without leaving a trace of any bombs, has been terrorizing America, and then Happy Hogan has been hurt by this, so Iron Man has to go into action, and then he threatens the Mandarin and tells him exactly where he lives, and then the Mandarin of course strikes, destroying his really cool house that we've seen in the other two films. He gets Pepper out of there, but then he goes to Tennessee where he tries to figure out the mystery of what these bombs are all about and hopefully defeat the Mandarin. And at the same time we have Guy Pearce playing the villainous industrialist that you always have to have in an Iron Man film, Aldrich Killian, who has invented this weird biotech thing that can make people repair themselves but also make them do quite a lot of other things as well. Iron Man 3 kind of learned a lot of lessons from Iron Man 2, and it's definitely the better sequel. It kind of negates Iron Man 2 in a lot of ways and is more of a sequel to the first film and the Avengers also. At least stylistically it refers to the first Iron Man. It's dealing with kind of the post 9/11 world, it's dealing with terrorism. The second film didn't really deal with terrorism. Very much like kind of a movie watcher sequel, like someone who understood the mistakes of the last film, understood the mistakes of making an Iron Man sequel, and made this, much like the first Iron Man film, more about character. There are a lot of different parts and a lot of different people in this film, but he keeps it fairly simple. It's really about Tony Stark, Pepper Potts, Guy Pearce, and you really get to know and deal with these characters and watch them develop. They have this narration going on. What I think the narration really does in this film is it gives you, with that kind of internal monologue going on, I mean not throughout the entire film, but it's kind of at the beginning and the end, it definitely gives you more of an attachment to Tony Stark, and that attachment we had in the first film. And it looked like, I think Shane Black was looking at the first Iron Man and realizing why that was such a successful and memorable film and putting that into Iron Man 3. He does a decent attempt at it. It feels very much like a Shane Black film and a comic book film. It almost feels like a film from the early 90s or the late 80s, like some of his bigger screenplays were. It has kind of like a dated feel to it. I mean that in a positive way. I thought that really worked for it. Iron Man movies are really about character, and that's how they started. You have to have as much fun when he's out of the suit as you are when he's in the suit. And I think in this film, a lot of my favorite scenes are when there's no Iron Man suit at all and he's being witty with this kid. It reminds you like why Robert Downey Jr. became a movie star because of the first Iron Man. And Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of Tony Stark is the heart of the film. He really has such a great personality on screen and such charisma. You like love to follow him. And Shane Black really got that and got what was so important about an Iron Man movie, is letting like Robert Downey Jr., the actor, shine. He did a great performance in the first Iron Man. The second one in Avengers, I wasn't really in love with him as much, but this I think he probably gave maybe his second best performance as Iron Man so far. And having Robert Downey Jr. and Tony Stark go on kind of like a detective journey in this film and not have the suit involved. When the suit does come out, it's not as interesting. One of the bigger problems with this is most of the big revelations, most of the developments throughout the film feel like too Hollywood and too kind of predictable Hollywood, and I think they're kind of masking themselves as like semi-witty. And as the film went on and then you get to this big like, you know, action sequence at the end, it just didn't feel as genuine. It's trying to make a good Iron Man movie and a good movie, but it's also kind of feels a little constrained by it, like it has to do certain things. It does really move very quickly and it has a lot of information and it balances it a lot better than most superhero sequels do. And this is probably one of the better and might be the best third superhero movie I've ever seen, because if you think of Superman 3, Spider-Man 3, X-Men 3, none of which I would ever want to see or subject myself to anytime soon. But Iron Man 3, I would watch it again, but the thing is, you know, I'm not only a movie fan, I grew up with Marvel Comics, and when I see a Marvel movie and I really like it, I instantly think, God, I want to see that again. I want to buy the Blu-ray or the DVD or see it again somehow. And Iron Man 3 I left and I was like, you know, I don't hate it or anything. I think there are definite pluses about it, but I'm not very passionate about it. It's certainly not as good as the first Iron Man. It's certainly not an amazing comic book movie. If it's a great comic book movie, I always call my dad, because my dad reads comics, and he's who read comics with me when I was a kid. And so anytime I see a good comic book movie, I call him directly after, and I'm all hyped up, and I'm like, oh my god, you have to see this movie. You have to see X-Men First Class. You have to see Avengers. I always like call him and recommend a good superhero movie right away, even though I know he's gonna see it anyway. It's just like I want to confirm to my dad that like this movie is awesome. When we used to talk about how cool it would be for there to be superhero movies, it's not a total failure. It's not like how we used to talk about, oh, it's a comic book movie because comic book movies sucked forever. And when you see a good one, there's still like some triumph in that. And Iron Man 3, there's a little bit of triumph. It's not a soaring success. It gets a lot right and it's smart about it. For a third superhero movie, it's seriously probably the best third superhero movie I can think of. It's better than Dark Knight Rises. It was better than Batman Forever. I don't think I'd call my dad about Iron Man 3. Eventually, when I talk to him again, I'll be like, yeah, you're not going to be that disappointed. It's a decent movie, but it's just not something I'm overly excited about. When the movie ended, I noticed the audience was kind of like, okay, I'm going to do a spoiler section because there's a lot of spoilery things I want to talk about. So if you do not want Iron Man 3 ruined for you, and I actually think there's a lot of kind of big revelations, so if you don't want Iron Man 3 ruined for you, just don't keep watching. Go see it. I'm sure you're going to see it this weekend anyway, so, or you've already seen it, or whatever, so this is a spoiler section. One of the big Hollywood things I had problems with was the revelation about the Mandarin and how the Mandarin is kind of a fake. It's an actor playing a part and Guy Pearce is the real villain. There's part of me that likes that and part of me that doesn't like that. I like that they made one villain and it's very personal and it's just Guy Pearce, and Ben Kingsley plays an actor who's playing the Mandarin. The comic book fan in me kind of hates that they just were like, yeah, let's just ruin the Mandarin. And that's like a very comic book movie tradition where they'll just like throw out a villain like that. But I didn't like in Iron Man 2 when they had two villains and it just feels cluttered, and that's a big comic book movie problem. And I like that it was so focused on Guy Pearce. I think he is a pretty good villain. He's not the most memorable villain, Guy Pearce's character. He fits the archetype of an Iron Man villain, like a mad industrialist who has a bone to pick with Tony Stark. Of course, you know, Jeff Bridges did it, Sam Rockwell did it, and now Guy Pearce is doing it. But Guy Pearce, I think, did a fairly good job. It just, you know, at this point he feels like he's filling a mold. The other big Hollywood thing I didn't like was the ending felt too much like, oh, this is a super happy ending. Even though this movie felt a little darker, let's have a super happy ending, and you know, Gwen is fixed, and I got all the shards of metal out of me, and the battery thing. Felt like the movie was getting way too long at that point. I wish they'd just wrapped it up a lot simpler. And it also felt kind of like the end of the Iron Man franchise. Like this was the end. And I know there's talk that Robert Downey Jr., this might be his last solo Iron Man film and he'll at least do the next Avengers movie. I don't know if it is. Maybe he'll do another one, but it definitely felt like this was the end of the franchise. I would be surprised to see Iron Man again after this because it felt like such a finale to me. I feel really sad about that because I cannot imagine someone else playing Iron Man. And I don't want to think about that. And I also don't like how filmmakers, when they do comic book franchises, don't do them like James Bond movies where it's just a continuing thing. There's never a James Bond movie where it feels like a definite end. It always just feels like another story. And so, you know, you can have several different people play them. And it's like Iron Man is obviously going to continue throughout all this Marvel universe. I hope, you know, I assume. I don't really want a definite end. Trying to make these continuing stories into more of what we're used to in a film franchise, and why not do it more like James Bond and the Spider-Man trilogy? You know, Spider-Man kept going forever and ever. I don't want a trilogy, I want an ongoing series. I didn't really like that, and I thought it was a little hokey, a little too like everything's wrapped up like in a nice Hollywood movie. You don't have to worry anymore. That was a little too much and a little too pandering, frankly. So if you have seen Iron Man 3 and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. Also a state of the end, but I think you guys know that. I guess all the endings of the Marvel movies are going to be funny now. We're not going to have cool revelations about the next Marvel movie. I was kind of hoping for a cool little end thing about what's going to happen in Thor or something, but I guess we're not doing that anymore.